What's up, guys? Welcome back to review and discussion for Unordinary episode 321. Um, okay, yeah, let's get into this one. So, the episode starts out with John talking to Arlo on the roof. And like I mentioned before, John is the liaison between Sarah and Arlo right now. So, again, I'm glad that I was able to predict that Arlo would connect and reach out to Sarah through John like he had told to Valerie. Anyway, Arlo tells John that they do want to meet up to discuss her pardon, and John remarks at how the authorities are actually being useful for once. To which Arlo, understandably, gets a little upset and says, "We're not all bad." And to his credit, he's right. He's not bad, and Cassandra's not bad. So, but everyone else, yeah, they're kind of bad. But anyway, but yeah, so John acts calm for some reason, and he's kind of laughing and joking with Arlo again, like last time when he was like, "Hey Arlo, I appreciate you, man. You're doing great. Thanks, buddy." It's kind of the same thing. He's like, "Hey, if you say so, man," like pats him on the back and everything, and he rushes off to tell Sarah. That's kind of weird. More on that in a bit. But we immediately cut to Darren's apartment. No time wasted. I appreciate that. That's totally fine. But John tells Sarah the news about the meetup and everything, and she grows a bit cautious, and I'm glad that she does grow a bit cautious, seeing at how fast it's all happening. And Layla then suggests that that they need to have the meeting take place on Sarah's terms, in a public location. That way they have witnesses, and that way the authorities can't do anything too suspicious in plain sight. And also with Layla and Kaden standing guard around the area just in case things do go south. John also retorts in that he should be there. He should be able to go too to help out, but Layla protests, stating that Kaden can only travel with two. And I do get the concern on Layla's end, honestly, but most importantly, as I've said before, John's got a fairly clean slate right now. He is a problem child for the authorities, yes, but he's not a criminal per se. As far as we know, he is a fairly normal student. He's not in deep with them, like he's not deep on their radar like Sarah, Remy, Blake, and Ison. And yeah, like there is some reason for the authorities to be cautious with him considering who his dad is, but at the same time, he's not a vigilante. He's not acting on any of the things that Unordinary taught. Nadia confirmed that with Keon when he was interviewed originally. Now, yes, Keon does want to talk with John a bit more to kind of dig deeper into him, but as far as we stand right now, John's not a threat to the authorities. But yeah. But as much as I would love for John to be there to back up Sarah, it is completely an unnecessary risk to himself. And he does clearly grow upset that he can't help out, which Sarah takes notice of. One thing I did think was kind of weird, and people brought up in the chat when we reacted, is that Layla mentions Kaden can only hold two of them. And I get that, but John can teleport himself. Now again, but John can teleport himself. John doesn't necessarily need Kaden to teleport. But like I said, I do totally get where Layla's coming from. It just kind of felt weird that was the reason that was given. But honestly, it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, Doc then wakes up and heads out while John is here, and Doc shows John a sample. We're gonna call it an opener, a sample opener he's been working on by crossing the amplifier with the blood samples that he got from John, specifically stating that it should help with opening up his aura channels. John drinks it and feels no differently. And I'm going to say it right now. This is probably the worst part of the episode. I don't mean like this thing right here, I think it is really cool seeing Doc's work come into progress. I mean, what happens as a result of this part in the story. Because after this, Doc just kind of keeps asking if it's working. And I have no doubt that it will have some effect on John, but this does take up a bit of the episode, in my opinion, and I'll touch more on this in a sec because we are going to come back to it. But John and Sarah then talk for a bit, and Sarah notices that John's uneasy about something, and she asks what's wrong, and he asks her if she's heard about Untitled, and Sarah just puts everything together that he must be worried about William, and John tells her that he hasn't heard from him in a bit. And then Sarah suggests that after all the dust settles, that they go visit him for a week, skipping school so they can spend time with William. While I do like this interaction, and that Sarah suggesting the trip to visit, despite what we, the audience, know of the current situation, this episode feels really weird with its emotions, specifically with John's emotions. Like, literally an episode ago, John had a panic attack, and okay, I don't know if he actually had a panic attack. But John did freak out once he heard about Untitled and about the possibility of William being punished by the Bureau of Authority. He had a freak out moment and was worried about his dad. And his dad's situation is still really unclear to John. He doesn't know what's happening. The only thing he does know is that Adrian suggested, hey, he may be on a business trip, but no one's here. And John said, hey, can you check in a few more days? And Adrian said, yeah, sure, of course. Now, and that was really the last we saw of John. John still doesn't know about his dad. He's still, according to this scene, he's still really worried about his dad. And that's just the weird part, in my opinion. In this episode, he's gone from, throwing some jabs and having a good laugh with Arlo, to candidly talking with Doc, to then being nervous with Sarah. And spoiler alert again, after this talk, it's the same old, same old. He's kind of just like, oh, okay, that's crazy. He's kind of just his normal self. And granted, I could totally chalk that up to, Sarah's talk and everything, kind of helping calm his nerves. Just kind of like, hey, I'm sure everything's fine. After everything happens, we'll go and visit him and everything will be fine. Don't worry. Now, I could totally chalk the rest of John's emotions in the in the end of the episode. I could totally chalk that up to, Sarah doing what Sarah does best and helping calm John down. I could totally get that. But it just feels so weird that John's emotions are kind of all over the place in this episode. And I feel like the episode definitely could have played out with something clearly bothering John, because John has been able to go through a day with things bothering him. We've seen that a lot before, and we've seen people pick up on that. But I don't know. I feel like the conversation with Arlo could have still happened, and John kind of being distracted, but still getting the gist of, okay, we have some pretty good news. Thanks, Arlo. I'll let Sarah know. And Arlo also notices when something's up with John. He notices, Arlo notices, Arlo's always had a careful eye on John. He could have easily been like, is something up with John? What's going on there? I don't know. That's just me. That's just me. But like I said, the emotional tone of the episode immediately following episode 320, it just feels really, really off. Now, after John and Sarah's conversation, like I mentioned, they talk a little bit more about Untitled, and Sarah asks if there's been a lot more vigilantes popping up again. She does mention that nothing has been mentioned on the TV about it. And John does mention that Remy and Blyke mentioned they've run into a lot more newbie superheroes. But the rest of the episode focuses on Doc checking up on John, seeing how he feels. And John just repeatedly says, hey, I don't really feel different. And ultimately he says, sorry, Doc, I think this might be a dud, honestly. Then Doc gives us a little bit of an info dump on the amplifiers, saying that they can cause severe damage to aura channels in large doses, and that he thought less potency would trigger his ability. Now, I believe that he did specifically refer to John with this. And with the rest of the episode, Doc stays up late trying to figure out how to get the opener to be able to work better. Now, I do think that what John drank will help him. I do think that we are going to see some sort of side effect or some sort of catalyst, if you will, from what John had today. I think considering how special John is and everything, I think after an emotional trigger, I think we will see something happening for John. However, I do think for someone like Sarah, he is on the right track in needing to figure out how to get it better, to work better. Because like I said, John is special. There is his DNA. His DNA is in... Part of his DNA is in the disablers because of Jane, or in the amplifiers because of Jane. So I am very interested to see where that goes there, because I don't think that what Doc had today would have been very helpful to someone like Sarah. So, yeah. So I think Doc's on the right track. And a real quick side note about Sarah before we wrap up, because like I said, that was the end of the episode. So before final thoughts, a quick rant about Sarah. After thinking about it a little bit, I do think that the authorities could find use for her actually in terms of actually getting info on Spectre, though it would most likely be in the same way that they got it from Terrence through Keon. And the really bad part about that is she would probably only be able to provide info on yes, on a sneeze. She'd probably only be able to have info on Layla, Caden, and potentially Neil. Probably not a whole lot in terms of helping them locate Orin or stuff like that. So, yeah, I do think they may actually be able to work out a deal, and they may actually be able to get info out of Sarah. But overall, yeah, it'd probably be really fucking bad. It'd probably be a really terrible deal. And now, for my overall thoughts on the episode. Yeah, like I said, this, even after reading a second time, this episode just kind of feels like stuff needed to happen in order for us to progress in the story, so here you guys go. And it also felt really short, unfortunately. And yeah, I don't want to say that this episode is bad or anything. It's not. It's just, in my opinion, it is the weakest episode since the return of season 2. It just feels a little bit off, honestly, and I'm not really sure what else there is to say about it. Yeah, this episode is kind of but yeah, that's overall. I would give this episode a level 5. I was gonna say this episode is a Blake episode, but Blake's actually the second best character in the series, and this is not the second best episode of season 2 this isn't even the second best episode of the second half of season 2. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you guys really like this episode, that is totally fine. For me personally, this episode just felt really off and kind of a lot lacking, honestly. But I am still very curious to see what's going to happen next in the story. Sarah is supposed to meet with Valerie before the end of the week. That could be today's episode. It could be in a few episodes, but I think that the events of this episode will be linked to the season finale. But who knows? Who knows? Could be good. Could be good. But anyway, guys, that will be it for today. As always, thank you all so much for watching. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.